Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Jasmeen and I'll be hosting our today's event. Our society is proudly sponsored by Pavomo, Rate My Placement, Edinburgh Innovations and Bonnie Burrito. Today I have the privilege of introducing Russell Dalglish, who is a high-profile influencer and connector, as well as a serial entrepreneur. He is the founding managing partner of the advisory group Exolta Capital Partners, as well as founding chairman of Scottish Business Network. He focuses on leadership, entrepreneurship, innovation, and strategic thinking. He is an experienced speaker in delivering entrepreneurial focused events around the world. Russell believes in the untapped potential within Scottish businesses. By founding Scottish Business Network, his goal is to build the largest network of Scots businesses around the world. At the end of the talk, there will be an opportunity for our members to ask any questions. So please drop your questions in the chat box along the way so that they can be answered at the end. Now, I extend my warm welcome to Russell Dalglish, and I'll hand over to you now.
Thank you very much. What a privilege to be here today. It's always a delight to meet younger people in our society and to see if there's anything they can learn from my own experience. So I'll just start. What I'm going to do is do maybe a few minutes about my own background. I'm then going to talk about Scottish Business Network, which is Scotland's national diaspora network. And then I'm going to talk a few hints and tips for young entrepreneurs. So, and if you've got any questions, if you'd like to drop them in the chat. So, I am really Scottish. The reason I say really Scottish is a young man, an undergraduate from Southampton University, did some research into my family name. And my family name of Dalglish or Dalglish was able to be traced back to the 1400s. And in the 1400s, it was identified as the name of a natural water feature in the Scottish borders in the Yarrow Valley. And that feature is 10 miles from where I was born. So the Dalglishes are all definitely Scottish borderers. I was born in Selkirk in the borders and then went to study at Napier University in Edinburgh. I was very fortunate in the fact that I chose to study a technology degree in computing. Now in 1982, this wasn't the typical thing to do, but a bit of luck, I did that. I did a sandwich course and it allowed me to spend a year working at a then major bank as a technology developer, or as we used to call them in the good old days, a programmer. And when I graduated, that bank was delighted to hire me. So through no planning whatsoever in my part, I ended up being a banker. So I was very fortunate at the bank in the fact that they supported me. I'd had this year as an undergraduate working with them, first placement student they ever took. So I was promoted very quickly within the bank. And after 4 years, I was sat down at a meeting. And you remember, programmers went to work in a suit and a tie at this stage. And I was asked, how did I want to progress my career? Did I want to take banking exams and become a banker? Or did I want to start studying more detailed technology and become a technologist? And I went home that night and I thought, probably sitting in a pub, and I thought, what did I want to do with my career? And I came in the next morning and I resigned because I realized I didn't want to be a banker and I didn't want to be a technologist. I really wanted to use these interpersonal skills I'd developed and to do something different. So I was very fortunately hired by an engineering company in Scotland. They trained me as a marketeer, customer service person. And then I went on from there to lead the support department in a disk drive manufacturer in Scotland. So my career was developing along the lines of where I saw myself, which was using my communication skills rather than my technology skills. So I got this job in, I think it was 1992, in what was the last Scottish disk drive manufacturer. So we made these hard drives of a very small format, and I had an absolute dream job. So I got to travel the world explaining to people about Scottish technology. And we worked with people like NASA, the Russian army, and a whole company. And I spent a lot of time in Japan, set up an operation out of California. So by the mid 90s, I was having this wonderful technology led world that I lived in, which involved meeting a lot of people. And I really started to realize that people around the world were very fascinated about me because A, I was quite tall at almost 2 meters, but more importantly, they were fascinated about the fact I was Scottish. And this Scottish entity was something that people realized I was Scottish and people valued that. So I kind of put that away in the back of my head, and then my career developed on. I then, this century, I started working quite a lot in turnarounds, and I would end up being managing director of companies, and I went through all that. And then in 2009, we sold the last company that I was running, and I became, I suppose, what you would call self-employed, or I became an independent advisor. And that's kind of what I've done for the last 12 years. And it's been absolutely incredible fun because I've had the opportunity to use my skills and experience to help others. And actually, if you think about it in Simon Sinek terms, that's my why. I'm here to help. Now, I'm able to generate capital and to generate money from doing that, but that's my passion, particularly in what we call the SME sector, so smaller companies. In about 2014, I'd spent most of my career, the first 14 years, mainly working out of London, though I was continuing to live in Scotland. But I then started to come back to Scotland in 2014 and started to realize that there wasn't really much of a link between Scotland and London. A lot of people traveled, but there was nothing that really brought together Scots in the city of London. So I met a lady, Christine Essen, who was Scottish but in London. And Christine had spent her career in economic development, initially for the Scottish company, more laterally with the government in Dublin. So we decided to start an initiative. And really, it was, could we bring together Scots in London to help other Scottish businesses secure more opportunities? And that was our completely naive idea. And from there, our entrepreneurial flair really came to life. So first of all, it came to life because we had no money for this initiative. So what we did was we started to reach out to Scottish companies in London and ask them if we could host our events in their offices. So once a month, we would host an event in the boardroom of a large multinational company with some sort of Scottish link. And Scots in London started to come out to support us. So we would have more and more people at our events once a month. And we'd have more and more interesting companies coming down to Scotland to meet these Scots in London. And it was great fun. But then what happened was we started to get noticed by Scots around the world. And they said, you seem to be starting a diaspora organization. Could we maybe join or take part? Now, to be honest, we had to go away and look up what a diaspora organization was. And we realized that that was fundamentally what we were doing. A diaspora is a group of individuals who have a relationship with a country. They may have been born there, studied there, worked there, or they may have an affinity, a particular liking for that country. So we've suddenly discovered that we were now starting to drive a diaspora organization with an international capability. And it's grown and grown and grown. And today we have over 200 members. We have about 10,000 people identified in the community across 76 countries. We have 11 ambassadors. These are Scots in cities around the world who represent our organisation, Scottish Business Network, but are also there to help Scottish companies to achieve international success. And this has become a self-fulfilling prophecy of an organisation. because it's something that brings together people with a common interest, a common sense of belonging in this idea or concept of Scotland. Our goal now is to continue with our mission of helping Scottish companies achieve success beyond the Scottish border, but also to link together the Scottish diaspora wherever they are in the world so they can share experience and share, I suppose, share their support and also their love for Scotland. One of the things that's been a tremendous success for us has been partnerships. So these are organizations who've identified they have a common theme with us and have now started to partner. And after 5 years, we run an annual event each year called Scottish International Week. And when we run it this year, we took advantage of the technologies that are available to run it online rather than as a physical event. And we ended up over a week getting over 1,200 people from what is now 47 different countries participating in Scottish International Week. All of the events that we delivered that week are all recorded and they're available if you want to check them out. The website is scottishinternationalweek.com. The website for SBN is sbn.com. And I'd really love anybody who's an Edinburgh University student to go and check out some of the materials there. The subjects we covered were entrepreneurship, leadership, we covered space, we covered the sector of technology, we covered food and drink, we covered tourism. And we did it in a Scottish way. So we did it whereby it was almost like a group of friends or almost a family getting together to discuss these subjects. And when you watch the videos, you see it coming to life with that sparkle. And the feedback we've had from around the world has been incredible. We did one particularly funny moment for me was that we'd been approached by an affinity Scot. So someone who isn't Scottish but has a passion for Scotland. And this gentleman, Dave, works for a large foreign exchange company based out of Utah in the States, out of Salt Lake City. So I was introduced to him and he and I got on really well, and he had a really strong message to give about the links between Utah and Scotland. He showed us evidence about people who traveled from Scotland to Utah. He explained that the University of Salt Lake City's song, the song they sing at football games is called The Scotsman. So that there's all these strong links. So on the day of the event, when I was interviewing him, the Zoom call went over to him. So this is a very American gentleman sitting in a tower block in Salt Lake City. He's a professional individual and his passion is foreign exchange. And when the screen lit up, when we started the call with him, he was dressed in a Scotland rugby top. And I burst out laughing. It was just such a wonderful moment. And since then, we've now gone on to develop more and more relationships with Scots and people with an interest in Scotland around the world. So our organization is about Scotland, but it's also about entrepreneurship. This desire that some of us have to change the world for the better. And that's my definition of entrepreneurship. Making money is a side thing that happens as part of what you do. It's about changing the world for the positive. Now, I thought about what is entrepreneurship and how do you become a successful entrepreneur? What are the steps you have to take? And I kind of ended up with about 10 that I thought sort of worked as things to think about. And these are not the steps that you'll get from a business course in entrepreneurship. These are steps that have been devised through, I suppose it's the hard knocks of reality. So the first trait I think an entrepreneur needs is to be brave. You have to be brave to go out there and allow yourself to fail. You have to take a risk. You have to do something that you believe will work. The world might not be sure of, and it might work or it might not work. But that requires a level of bravery that very few people in society have, but all entrepreneurs have it. the ability to get out there. I think about it as I almost think about it in sort of a World War I terms, where there's a trench. You have to be willing to put your head above the trench and see what happens. You'll find as an entrepreneur, for example, the people that love you don't want you to go through the pain of failing. So they would rather you didn't take those chances. So what you have to do is to surround yourself with individuals that think like you do, individuals who also know that to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to be brave. And the second point is about being visible. People have to know you're there. Now, in 2020, being visible has changed quite a great deal. So being visible is probably about being visible online. So you do this through having a LinkedIn profile, for example, participating in events, but also making it clear to people what exactly your ask is as an entrepreneur. So I hear a lot of people telling me about their product. Hello, Russell, we'd love to work with you. We've created this new product. It's fantastic. And that's interesting. But being visible is about telling me why that matters. What is the effect that your product or service is going to have on the world, and how is it going to make the world a better place? So as an entrepreneur, you cannot be shy. You cannot, as we say in Scotland, hide under a bushel. You have to be up there, visible, telling us about what you do. And I don't mean doing 1-minute pitches. I mean being present and visible every single day. So one of the things I encourage entrepreneurs to do is to post something about your sector on LinkedIn every day. Engage in discussions about your sector, about your market. Be visible. The third trait is entrepreneurs are hunters. You have to get out there and seek the opportunity. Yes, after a period of time, people may call you, present you with opportunities and ask you to engage. But what's more likely to happen, particularly when you're at a young business, you've got to get out there and hunt to find those opportunities. You've got to be able to analyze the available information to understand where the opportunity might be, and you have to be ready to knock on the door to see if someone's willing to discuss that opportunity with you. So seek the opportunity and understand what an opportunity looks like, and that comes with experience. So I've seen, though we're going through a terrible time at the present moment with COVID-19, about to go into what could be a long, dark winter, there's also evidence of organizations, companies, and individuals who've actually been able to flourish in this time, possibly because they've been able to pivot their company into something that the world needs at this time, possibly because they've been able to offer their services to people who need help at this time. Seek the opportunity. The next one is to be strategic. So strategy is about building a plan and also executing that plan. So when you've started to identify opportunities as an entrepreneur, you must be strategic in how you address these opportunities. So one of the things that I notice is sometimes when we're in a young, early stage business, we're hungry for opportunity and we'll take any opportunity that comes along. But what we must be good at is we must be able to understand which opportunities to take on and which ones to qualify out from. And that's what I mean about being strategic, being really careful to spend your precious time on the things that are most important. Don't get waylaid on side projects. Focus on what you need to do. The next is about being resourceful. Now, we Scots are incredibly resourceful. If there's one thing I've learned through chairing Scotland's national diaspora organisation, it's that Scots are canny. We're good with our money. We know how to spend money to get the best possible return on that. We know how to take advantage of the tools that are available through the internet to do research, to deliver projects, to come up with new solutions. in a very cost-effective way. If you look, for example, at my website, russelldalglish.com, I had no intention about having a website. But during lockdown, my youngest son was trapped with us at home for 3 months. Now, to give him some interesting things to do, I asked him if he would make me a website. And he said, I don't know how to make a website. So we found a product called Strikingly, which cost $120 for 3 websites. And he learned how to make a website. So that was an example to me about being resourceful. I've ended up with a website, and he's ended up with skills he didn't possess before. And now, actually, he's just secured a full-time job using his digital skills. So be resourceful. Come up with new and imaginative ways to do things. If you look at Scottish International Week, we were incredibly resourceful there in the way that we used products such as Zoom. But we were also opportunistic and strategic in the fact that we identified an amazing Scottish company called Hey Summit, who provided us with the software that allowed us to deliver that product, that event. Next, now this will come naturally to the people on this call. You must have a global mindset. You must be thinking about, how does my product or service fit into different parts of the world? There has never been a better time to do international business than today. Previously, if you wanted to do international business, you may have required to have the money to invest in travel. You may have had to have the connections in different countries. But today, all you need is Zoom. Zoom, we are all windows on Zoom. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, you're just a window on Zoom. So I have to use Zoom to talk to my mother in Bath, just as I use it to talk to a fintech entrepreneur in Canberra or a food and drink specialist in Brazil. We are now all one planet. If COVID has taught us anything, we're all one planet. We're all affected in the same way. So have that global mindset from the start. Don't be limited by geography. And I know that the people on this call, particularly the international students, just understand that naturally. Now, every entrepreneur, I want to tell you something about you. You are a salesperson. You may not want to be a salesperson. You may feel you don't have the necessary assets to be a salesperson. But trust me, you are a salesperson. No one but you can better represent your idea or service in the market. You need to be the person on the front of your company, understanding the feedback from the market. It's really critical you do that. Now, being a salesperson is not some idea about a double glazing salesperson going door to door. It's about someone who spends their time understanding the customer's need or want. And that's what you've got to do. So take every opportunity you can to refine your sales skills, to learn how to intelligently listen, to understand the importance of follow-up, and to understand that your goal is to help your clients overcome the challenges they have, not to sell them a product. Help your customer. That is the perfect way to do sales. Next is kind of obvious. You've got to be innovative. If you do what everyone else is doing, it's pretty difficult to be successful. We talk about, well, the market zags, you zig. Doesn't matter what terms you use, but you must be able to do things in a different way. You don't necessarily have to design a unique product or service. You may have to use existing tools or enter existing markets in a different way. To give an example, I met a young lady a couple of years ago, and she ran a 1950s style cafe in Elgin in Scotland. She was dressed as someone would be going to a party in the 1950s when I met her. And I thought that This was a passion for her in the 1950s, and this was why she had a business, which was a cafe themed around that period. And she explained to me that she had actually been innovative. She had analysed her market in Elgin and identified that there were a large number of people who were teenagers or in their 20s and the 50s. They enjoyed the music from them, they enjoyed the lifestyle from them. So she used innovation to create a solution for them based around about a stylized idea of the 50s. She had no inherent love for that period, a period she couldn't really have experienced because of her youth, but she understood that that's what her market needed, and she serviced that market in an innovative and creative way. And that's what you have to be. You have to be innovative. Show us a different way to do so. Next, you must be technically savvy in this modern world. You must adopt, try technologies at every opportunity and see what works for you. It's difficult for someone at my age, in my mid-50s, to adopt new technologies because I have an inherent fear from the way I was brought up of things not working. So the first Zoom call, for example, I hosted, I pressed one of the buttons and cut everyone off. But it doesn't matter. I have to get back on that horse again and I have to work out how to use Zoom. So during lockdown, I've had to work out how to use Zoom, Microsoft Teams, WebEx, Skype, Google Meetups, you name them. I've had to learn how to use these different products and services. But remember, I was trained as a technologist when I was very young, but the technologies are all different now. But nevertheless, I have to put in the work to understand how to use these and which is best for me. You may be surprised to know that my number one piece of technology for 20 years was email. Email allowed me to easily communicate with people around the world. Email stopped being my number one technology 18 months ago. It then became LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the single most powerful tool to help me do what I do. It allows me to connect with people, to adopt new ideas, to find out what's happening in the market. It allows me to run events, to communicate with people and to share ideas. Learn the technology that's most appropriate for you. Don't delegate it to someone else. Spend the time learning how to use it yourself. And finally, as an entrepreneur, you've got to put the work in. You cannot be a successful entrepreneur, in my mind, without working incredibly hard. Sometimes working doing things you don't want to do. I can remember organizing an event and individually asking 800 people to attend a couple of years ago because we discovered that using an automation tool like MailChimp wasn't working. It doesn't matter what I have to do. I'm willing to put in the hard work to do that if it achieves the end goal that I want to achieve, which is to help some business to move forward or to help some individual to achieve their potential. So that's a little bit about me, about my career path, about Scottish Business Network, and maybe a little bit that might help you with some thoughts about entrepreneurship. I certainly hope it helps. Now, if you want to contact me, the easiest way is through LinkedIn. Just send me a message. Or you can email me at russell@exolta.com. But now what I'd like to do is to hear your questions and see if there's anything I can do now to help you, or if you're watching this as a recording, drop me a message with your question. I love answering questions. Thank you.
Sorry, thanks, Russell. It's amazing to know the key skills of entrepreneurship and your journey as well. Like, it's very motivating that you started off as a traditional path as a banker, then into technology, and then finally being an entrepreneur. I wanted to ask you, so you mentioned 10 key skills for entrepreneurship. Do you reckon that anyone can learn them at any time, or like, is entrepreneurship by innate, is it an innate quality, or can you develop it over the period?
I believe I believe that most of us can learn most things. So if I think about entrepreneurship, you can learn that.
Okay.
I think about the techniques of sales. So we talk about people being born a salesman or not born a salesman, born a salesperson. I think you've got to turn it round, which is if we think about sales as helping someone,
Yeah.
then any of us as a human being can help someone.
Yeah.
The effort requires an understanding how to help them. So any of us can do that. And I know that my opinion can sometimes, people think it's glib, but you know, if you've met me and worked with me, my desire is to help people. That's what I do. Now I get paid well for doing that, and we build some fantastic companies, but fundamentally I'm trying to help, and any entrepreneur can do that. Any entrepreneur can help. The one thing an entrepreneur has to do to build a successful business is to ensure the way they are helping is addressing a need in the market.
Fantastic. Thank you. So we've got questions from the audience. And first of all, Malika complimented about the quality of events in the Scottish International Week. She said it was outstanding and she really enjoyed it. And Malika wants to ask, what is the business model of the Scottish Business Network?
Very good question. So, as with any entrepreneurial business, you start with one idea in mind. You have a very clear vision of what you want to achieve. In our case, which is to interconnect the entire Scottish diaspora across the world to help Scotland. That's our vision. That's what we will achieve. Our mission to do this is by helping Scottish companies access the diaspora to secure new opportunities. Our business model has been based on membership. So our members support us to do what we do. So they pay an annual fee of £400 per person to be a member of our organisation. We also identify additional revenue streams. So for example, the Scottish Government has helped us. We also do project work, which provides us with an income. And we also now work with sponsors, which provides us with an income. But it's having a business with multiple revenue streams is a great way to protect your business. We're also, of course, Scottish. So we're very canny with every penny we spend, which also helps.
Fantastic. And Zara wants to know, what do you think is a key skill that entrepreneurs should avoid?
A key
skill that entrepreneurs should avoid?
A skill to be avoided?
Yes.
Talking too much.
Sure.
So I think it's very difficult because young entrepreneurs tend to watch older entrepreneurs, and the older entrepreneurs are talking like I am now.
Yeah.
But actually, I work really hard at becoming a better listener. So I think that the problem is sometimes we can be using words because we're nervous, or using words because we think we're trying to convince someone. But if we think about the role of the entrepreneur is to try to understand how they can help someone else, inherently you have to be in listening mode to do that.
Following on that, but you said that the key skill for entrepreneur is to sell, right? Sales. So how can you be a better salesman when you are not very talkative?
So let me try and sell you something.
Sure.
So what are you trying to achieve at the moment with these sessions that you run?
I would love to enhance my entrepreneurial mindset and gain more understanding from
And how do you go about doing that?
By listening to key.
So if I could perhaps get you some more interesting entrepreneurs to participate in this, would that help you?
Yes.
Okay, well, I've just made a sale.
Yeah, but I agree. So you just have to talk about key selling points, not just making a conversation for
So,
sake of.
so key selling points is like a technical term, but you are responsible for part of what you do with these sessions is you have interesting speakers come along. So if I could introduce, say I could get you, who was the chap who was American president? Obama. So if I phoned you up and I said that I could get Obama to appear here, would you say yes?
Yes, of course.
So that's me concluded a sale because I've been able to help you to do something you couldn't do before through something I can do. I can't, by the way, but there we go.
Yes, all right, it makes sense. Thank you. And Adam wants to know what drove you to spend your career helping others, more recently with the Scottish Business Network.
That's a very good question. So we speak a lot about developing leaders in our society. And I think what we have to do is to develop ourselves first. So I went through a period of my life where I went through a lot of self-analysis of who I was, what excited me, what did I want to do, how did I want to frame my world. And by doing that, I started to understand better how I could fit in society and how I could be of use to society. And I discovered that I'm really good at networking. I'm really good at helping people through creating connections. So that's how I tried to change what I do to better reflect what I'm naturally gifted at. So, for example, I'm very comfortable appearing on a stage and talking. So I could do this on a stage and I wouldn't think twice about it. For something like 90% of the population, they are very nervous being on the stage. So I should try to do something that allows me to speak to groups. Secondly, I love international travel. So doing something whereby I can meet my desire for international travel is sensible. So suddenly creating Scottish Business Network becomes a very sensible thing to do because it involves me standing on stages talking to groups, and it also involves a lot of international travel. So I think a key is trying to understand what you really enjoy. And more than anything else, I enjoy being able to help someone.
Fantastic. Thank you. And the next question is from Will, so it's in two parts. How do you think the Scottish business environment will change in the light of Brexit? That's the first part. Can you answer that first, please?
Do you mind if I answer that very sensibly or I'll answer it honestly, okay?
Yes, please. Yeah.
I have no idea. I think probably life will continue more or less as normal. I think we've had a long time to get used to Brexit. It wasn't something that I wanted, but we've had a long time to think it's coming and get used to it. In 2019, Brexit completely dominated our thoughts, and we thought that nothing could be more traumatic than Brexit. By April 2020, nobody was talking about Brexit. We were talking about COVID-19. So I think that the world will keep on turning. So that's what I think will happen. We'll find a way to cope, and we'll find a way to flourish as part of that. And I think Scotland, as the other nations within the United Kingdom, will just get on with it. Because after all, that's actually what business people do. We just get on with it.
Okay, thanks. And the second part of the question is, could you please speak a little bit about Scotland's entrepreneurial environment in terms of regions? Is it centralized to Edinburgh or Glasgow? And if so, do you think that is changing or will change in the future?
That's a really good question. And I'm probably a good person for this, since I because of the nature of what I do, I know a lot of entrepreneurs across Scotland. I think we have a challenge in the UK and perhaps in Europe about what an entrepreneur is. So when I get pitched by a 22-year-old female San Francisco entrepreneur or a 22-year-old female Glasgow entrepreneur, there's a common trait in the way they pitch. So the Glasgow entrepreneur will tell me about their product or service, they'll tell me about the benefits of it, and they'll tell me about why it's exciting. The American entrepreneur will pitch me their vision. They will pitch me their vision of how they're going to change the world by being successful at what they do. So I think there's a fundamental difference in an approach to entrepreneurialism. And I think the American way is the way to go. And I've been heavily affected by that by living in the States for a couple of years. Secondly, when I look at Scotland, if I look at some of our most imaginative and creative entrepreneurs, I don't believe they're in Edinburgh or Glasgow. I think they're people like Jamie McGowan on Isle of Harris. There are people who are dealing with the business that they find themselves in wherever they are in the world, and they're taking that forward. And I think there's amazing entrepreneurs outside the cities who are dealing with challenges that people in the city don't face. So for example, if you think about Jamie on the Isle of Harris, to do anything, he can't just sell to his local market. His local market is the people who live on Harris. That's not a big island. Whereas he wants to export to the mainland. Whereas people perhaps in Glasgow think, well, it's nice and easy, I'll just sell to people in Glasgow. Whereas I think to be a successful entrepreneur, you've got to have a global mindset. So I think that sometimes people in the country have got a better global mindset than the ones in the cities.
Fantastic. And you touched a little bit upon the difference between UK and US. Can you please elaborate on the difference between entrepreneurial mindset between UK and US?
So I believe that America has shown over the last 60 years the greatest national characteristics for entrepreneurship. So I think if I was to ask which country in the world produces the best entrepreneurs, I would probably suggest America in my lifetime. And I would evidence that with Apple, Google, eBay, Twitter, Facebook, right? So that's how I would evidence it. I think in Scotland, we are incredibly good at innovation. We have a highly educated workforce. We have great universities. We're amazing at, if you look at the pharma sector and health, we're incredibly creative there. But I think we need to get better at commercializing what we do. So I would think of Scots as innovators, Americans as entrepreneurs, but that then gives us the challenge or the opportunity to make everyone in Scotland a better entrepreneur.
Fantastic, thank you. Next question is from Joanna. She's curious about biggest challenge that you've faced during COVID-19 and how you've tackled it.
I suppose I took it was quite strange for me. So in 2008, at the recession, the last major recession we had, I was running a 200-person company. So when we went rather dramatically into recession, I had to manage a company over 18 months where we reduced the headcount from 200 to 90 in order to allow the company to survive. Now, when we entered COVID in late March, I didn't have any staff. So I was able to view the market and decide how I had to adjust what I did. So the challenges I anticipated were, how would I communicate in a world where I couldn't do face-to-face meetings anymore? And that was probably what I focused my attention on. So the way I addressed that was from the 1st of April, I reached out to 30 first connections every day to try and see how they were and if was there anything I could do to help. I reached out to major organizations and asked if I could donate some of my time as a speaker. So that allowed me to practice using Zoom, etc. So the major challenge I anticipated at the start was, how did I remain connected? Now, very fortunately, I'd been using products like Zoom and Teams and Skype for about 18 months as a way to communicate with Scots all over the world. So I had a head start there. But the biggest challenge I overcame was how to remain connected and how to continue developing new connections when I had to operate in this new way.
Fantastic. And can you please elaborate about the time then when you were managing 200 people under you and your company went into recession, and what sort of steps you took to overcome that?
You go into survival mode. So this is the mode that we see many companies operating in at the present moment under COVID. So your goal is to get out the other end alive, to get your company to survive. So you do whatever you have to do. So you have to cut costs, you have to reduce personnel, you have to reprice, you have to invent new services, you have to manage your cash flow. Like we run a daily cash flow for 6 months. Every single day trying to understand how could we get through that week. You have to manage money incredibly carefully. But you also have to somehow spend time every day looking for new opportunities. So it was so managing a company through crisis, I think, is about absolute total focus on coming out the other end. Now, the challenge we face with COVID is we're not entirely sure where the other end is. I would probably think that if you can manage to keep your company going through till the spring, you've probably got a pretty good chance of coming out the other end of this. But that's an assumption I make at the moment.
Fantastic. Malika wants to know, as a new entrepreneur, what are the key skills, key connections should one look for in early on? Who to talk to and where to find them?
I would suggest getting a mentor. So
early on.
I think identifying a mentor to help you is really important as early as possible. There are thousands of people like me around who are willing to give up part of our time for no fee to advise or help a young entrepreneur. So I don't think there's ever a time it's too early to do that. Now, that mentor will then help you to understand what questions you need to be asking. So it may be the fact that your initial idea isn't the right one, or you need to meet people to understand your idea better, or you need to switch your idea. But I think having a sounding board from someone with slightly more experience is really important. However, I think it's an entrepreneurial trait to be able to approach and find that mentor. And that's what's really important, is to pick up the telephone or send someone a LinkedIn message or meet them at an event and say, I have this idea, Russell, would you be willing to give me 10 minutes to listen to me about it? And then that's the way to actually start that engagement with a mentor.
Fantastic. So do you look for any sort of traits when you agree to someone that, okay, I'll be your mentor? So do you?
Absolutely. So
would you like to share that, please?
I will. So the trait I look for is evidence of someone taking action. So you and I could have a meeting just now to talk about your entrepreneurial idea. During that discussion, I might make a couple of suggestions. Okay. Now, the people I will work with are the ones who email me the next day and say, Russell, I have taken these actions based on the suggestions you made to me, and one of them's a good idea, one of them's a bad idea, and one of them didn't work. Could we have another meeting? I would meet with that person and I would probably mentor them and I would probably help them. It's taking action that's important. So 9 out of every 10 people I have an initial meeting with about potentially engaging with them don't act like that. And I just don't take the relationship forward. You know, it might be 48 hours later, they send me a thank you, and then I never hear anything again. Or perhaps I get more questions, but they don't tell me how they got on following our first discussion. And this is possibly a sales trait. So if I was going out to meet a mentor and the mentor said, Russell, you need to get your hair cut, I would drop them a message the next day to say, I've had my hair cut. You know, so I would take the action to move something forward. and then I would tell the person that I've done it. That's how you build trust in the relationship.
Fantastic. Probably you'll hear from me soon. Next question is from Will Martin. Could you elaborate on how you've helped Scottish entrepreneurs through the network or through Exolta?
Through Exolta, what we do is we engage with companies. We have a really clever approach to very quickly analyzing the challenges and opportunities to the company. Then we roll up our sleeves and help the companies implement those. So it's a very dynamic, great fun, fast-paced way to work. And we create value within these companies and we help them to drive growth. With Scottish Business Network, we are primarily an introductory network. So we will work with companies. So someone sent me a message this morning, which was a Scottish Bee Company. So they mentioned the fact that they're now going to start exporting to Tokyo in Japan. And they mentioned the fact that some of the introductions we've been able to make help them. So that's typically what we can do. So the way I think about it is we can help you. So someone wanting our help at SBN, we can help them understand what question to ask, help to identify who they should be asking it to, and then help to open that door. So for example, we have a Scot at one of the top 180 companies in the world. So there's Scottish people at Google, there's Scottish people at Facebook, there's Scottish people at IBM. So we can open those doors and help. We have a unique way of doing it, which has just proved incredibly successful.
Thanks. I think the context of their question was, is it mostly through capital investments or more advisory? But from your question, it seemed like it's more like advisory rather than investments.
It is.
Fantastic. So are you involved in any of the investments in Scotland?
Sorry, say again?
Like it's just a general question. Do you do investments as well, along with working as a Scottish entrepreneur?
Yes, I do. So I get involved in a number of investment projects. I'm also a member of 2 investment syndicates in Scotland, as well as one in the States.
Could you elaborate what are the key skills for investments in general?
I think people overcomplicate investment. Investment is about the fact that you require money and you can make that money work hard to make more money. That's basically what an investor wants. An investor wants to have confidence that you can make that money grow. And that's what I think people sometimes miss when they're looking for investment. So they tell us about how they're going to spend the money, but not about how they're going to create more money or how they're going to create more capital or more value. So that's what I always look for, is someone who's got a clear understanding of the market and a clear understanding about how they're going to make this work. And a lot of that can be about the team. So if they have if someone's 19 and tells me they're going to build the world's best fintech in the airline industry, and they have on their board the ex-chief exec of Boeing and the ex-chief exec of Bank of America, I'm probably going to believe them. But if they're on their own and they have no one, it's kind of difficult for me to understand how they'll be able to make their plan work.
Fantastic, thank you. So our last question is from Will again. Could you talk a little bit more about pitching and what makes a good pitch, possibly elaborating on the difference between the visual and selling the product, as you've suggested in the American example?
So when making a pitch, the best thing to do is to find out as much as you can about the people you're going to be pitching to. Because if you understand something about the people you're pitching to, it allows you to change your pitch to better meet them. When you're pitching, I want to hear people pitching their vision about how they're going to change the world. I want to hear about their understanding of the market, their understanding of the competition. Now, I'll give you an example. So I was at an event a couple of years ago, And a young lady was talking to me. She was pitching. She had 5 minutes to pitch. She'd been talking for 7 minutes. So for me, if you overrun time, that's really bad. So she was given 5 minutes. She'd been talking for 7, and I was getting really confused as to what it was she did. So I reflected back to her, and I said, so if I've got this correct, you have an idea about a chemical compound that will stop people dying of peanut allergy. And she said, yes. And I said, well, that's your pitch. You don't have to say anything else, because everyone understands about peanut allergy. Everyone understands that they don't want their loved ones to die. So if you've got a potential solution for that, that sounds really interesting. She then asked me, could I introduce her to investors? And I said, no. I said, instead, what you should do is to go onto Google and do some research and see if you can identify any wealthy, successful people who have mentioned peanut allergy in an interview. Because as I understand it, peanut allergy is inherited. So if you can help them by coming up with a solution to stop people dying from peanut allergy, you could well help them stop a member of their family dying. Now, I reckon they're going to be very interested in investing in you if you can achieve that result. So I think that's an idea about how to do pitch and how to think about investment capital.
Thanks, Russell, for your key insights into entrepreneurial skills and your journey, your career journey. It has been really insightful. Are there any final words you'd like to say now?
I think I'd just like to thank you all for choosing Edinburgh as the city to study in, because Scotland benefits incredibly from our own talent going to our universities, but also from people around the world coming to Edinburgh and seeing the benefits of Scotland and then taking that back out to the world again. So I'd like to thank you all for that and for your time today.
Thank you for your time. It is our privilege to listen to you today, and thank you very much for coming along. And that's it. We'll end our session now, and please join us for our next sessions. And thank you everyone for joining us today. Bye now.
Bye everyone.